It's the Daily Doug.
Hey y'all, welcome back to the Daily Doug. Thanks for being with me today. My friends, you have found me on a Wednesday, and this week we are leading up to our 1000th episode here on the Daily Doug, and I am taking the opportunity to go back through some of our most favorite bands, and I was trying to figure out what to include today, so I went to my master list. This is the list that I have compiled from all of the suggestions from our patrons that have gone through the process that we have over on Discord, where people upvote it and I get community buy-in for some of these songs that I don't know already. That's one of the ways that helps me prioritize where I go next. So I went to my list and I sorted by the most number of votes. I'm like, what does our community, what song, what band does our community most want to have me react to based on the number of votes that it got in this submissions process? And lo and behold, it was a song by Genesis that I had never heard before, a song called Stagnation. So guess what we're doing? We're listening to some old school Genesis today, and I'm happy that you are here. Of course, Genesis has been one of our favorite prog rock bands since the early days of the channel. Before I started diving into their music here as the Daily Doug, I had knowledge of Genesis, but more as a pop rock trio than the classic prog stuff that they did in the 70s. I knew their 80s and 90s music, stuff like Invisible Touch and Land of Confusion and No Son of Mine and I Can't Dance and stuff like that. So when I started looking into the early repertoire of Genesis, I started off and it was so profound, y'all. I heard Supper's Ready, Firth of Fifth, and One for the Vine all in a row, and we're off and running. I'm like, yeah, this music, it's got guts, it's got structure, it's got virtuosity, it's got all of this stuff that's hard to quantify, and it just becomes magical. I love listening to all of this music. So since that time, y'all, I have ended up hearing all of Nursery Crime, all of Foxtrot, all of Selling England by the Pound, all of The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, all of A Trick of the Tail, and all of Wind and Wuthering. And we've got a smattering of other songs that I've heard as well. I've got my Duke album out today. I've heard the Duke Suite from that album, but not the rest of it yet. So, there's still some of these albums that I need to get to, but the thing that just floored me as I was reading in today is that the band's second album, Trespass, I think I've only heard one song from that album so far, and it was a song called Visions of Angels, and it was all the way back in episode 3 of our Doug on Demand series on Patreon, and I don't really remember it. So for me, their second album is still uncharted territory, really, for me. So I'm eager to get to this song, Stagnation, which does appear on side 2 of this 1970 album from Genesis called Trespass. Our friend John suggested this song to us, and as I read in here, the entire band was involved with the songwriting for this song. Peter Gabriel was the one that wrote the majority of the lyrics. When we hear this song, we're going to hear the guitarist that they had in the band at the time, Anthony Phillips, along with Mike Rutherford, both playing on some 12-string acoustic guitars. I love the sound of those guitars. And we've also got Tony Banks. He's playing the piano. He's playing the organ. He's playing the mellotron. We got Peter Gabriel doing the vocals. He's got some flute going on. Mike Rutherford's going to be on the bass. He's playing the 12-string guitar, like I said. Anthony Phillips is on guitars. Tony Banks is on also a 12-string guitar and some keyboards. And they've got John Mayhew with them doing the drums and percussion and backing vocals. So I'm ready to hear this, friends. It looks interesting. As I pulled the lyrics, there's not a whole lot of lyrics here, and there's not a chorus. that is listed, just verses. So I will be very curious to see how this makes its way, how this song makes its way through from beginning to end. So let's take a look. This is Stagnation from Genesis. Here we go. Cool. That's a heck of a progression. They're in G major, F sharp, to E, back to G, there's E minor, there's A, B flat, down to A, minor 4 to 1. How about that?
Whose smile from but is free seems to me like any other crime.
May from the relative minor, from the parallel minor.
To be saved.
Love the panning on the toms. It's got a warm sound, doesn't it? Sounds like the 5 turns minor. Just listen to those guitars. Sounds like a synthesizer taking the lead melody line there. It's just an evocative sound, isn't it? It's a minor chord. I'm not sure where they landed. And it goes down by a full step to another minor chord. It's just a beautiful sound, friends. Is that a didgeridoo? It's on a low D. Right. Major chord to a minor dominant, then back to D major, A minor, I'm figuring out that I've been a Tony Banks fan for as long as he's been alive. Great playing. This music is completely different than verse 1, y'all. We're in a different key, pretty sure. But the progression's different. The ice cold knife has come to decorate the dead.
somehow, and each will find a home,
4-1.
and there will still be time for loving my friend. You are there.
Panning is so cool, y'all. Headphones recommended.
Forever, beside the silent mirror, and fish for bitter minnows, amongst the weeds and slimy water.
Interesting effect on Peter's voice there. I love all of these sounds, friends. Kind of a mixolydian progression over that pedal bass. Oh boy.
I said I wanna sit down.
There's parts of this that remind me of the Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. Who wants a drink?
I want a drink to take all the dust and the dirt from my throat. I want a drink. I want a drink to wash out the filth that is deep in my guts. I want a drink.
There's that flat 7 to 4 to 1, that mixolydian progression, and the lovely solo flute. It also strikes me that verse 3's music was different than both the music in verse 1 and verse 2. Cool! Organ. Then let us drink. Then let us smile. I can do that. Then let us. I think they landed on A. Little suspension and resolution. What a lovely tune. It should not work as well as it does. Why do I say that? There's no repetition. Not much that I can think of in the piece. Once we get into a section, they repeat the progression or they repeat the idea. But once it moves on to another idea, it moves on to another idea. We're not going back. And subliminally, I think that's part of the underlying meaning of the song. It's just a story song. Like I said, no real chorus, just some verses, and only 3 little verses plus this outro. I would call this through composed. We do have pieces in the classical repertoire that line up like that just kind of don't repeat any section. We've heard of A, B, or A, B, A, or stuff like that. This would be A, B, C. 3 completely different things. A, B, C with the coda that's also different. So everything through composed. The A section that we hear first really doesn't ever come back. The B section that we hear in the middle doesn't come back, and so on. It's an interesting way to build a piece of music. It makes it more difficult because we tend to like being met with previous themes. Oh yeah, we're back on that. So we get the idea of what the song or what the piece is kind of about, or what its calling card is musically from what gets repeated the most. You know, if the chorus is the thing that gets repeated the most, we hear the chorus. If it's something that's an introduction or something in the verse, we tend to hear that and we think, oh, that song, it goes like this, you know, and that's part of the rhetoric and the storytelling of how the musical ideas are put forth in typical pieces. But here they start us off and whoosh, straight to the end. And talk about a journey, friends. I really, really enjoyed it. On Monday, our very last video that we did back on Monday, we heard When the Wild Wind Blows from Iron Maiden. And that was a song that sort of imagines and involves in its lyrics and in its storytelling a nuclear attack. And here, I believe that we have another song that's dealing with, at least from a human perspective, what does a person or what do people do? How do we respond to a bomb being dropped? How do we live through that? That sort of thing. When I grabbed the lyrics, there was a portion of the lyrics at the very beginning that I don't know why it was included, because it was not included in the song. And I don't know where this comes from, but I'm going to read it because it was provided when I looked up the lyrics. It says, to Thomas S. Eiselberg, a very rich man who was wise enough to spend all his fortunes in burying himself many miles beneath the ground. As the only surviving member of the human race, he inherited the whole world. That's kind of what I'm going off of with this interpretation. And the very first line of the piece in verse 1 that we did hear was, here today, the red sky tells his tale, but the only listening eyes are mine. If there's a red sky telling its tale and you're the only one whose eyes can view it, then that tells me that you might be a survivor of some sort of apocalyptic event, right? And it goes kind of on from there. Really, really fascinating, y'all. But in the end, I think the thing that I take away from this song the most is the idea that we need to keep moving forward. We need to keep moving on. I mean, the whole idea of stagnation itself, stagnation means, as a word, the state of not moving forward, or not moving at all, or just the state of not having a flow, you know, a lack of activity, a lack of growth, a lack of development. We're stagnated, we're mired, right? And so when I hear that he wants a drink, I want to take all the dust and the dirt from my throat. I want a drink. I want a drink. I want to wash out the filth that is deep in my guts. I want a drink. And then in the outro, it's just these little things. Then let us drink. Then let us smile. Then let us go. And for me, it's us saying goodbye to that. We're moving forward. Whether it's in the context of an apocalyptic event or not, I think in general, that's kind of where I'm interpreting and letting this song kind of end. That's where I feel it. Now, I also get the sense of it's kind of pointing out the idea that isolation itself brings about all types of potential negative psychological impacts. And so the feeling of loneliness and being isolated can lead to paranoia maybe, or it can lead to losing your grip on reality a little bit, losing a sense of yourself, because it's being social with all of our other humans that helps give us context for what's really going on around us and not just what's in our own head, and helps build our sense of reality, right? Really fantastic song. So after recording this album, the guitarist Anthony Phillips left the band, and from what I read, they almost split up. But they decided to soldier on. They ended up bringing in Phil Collins to replace their drummer, John Mayhew, who I believe was older than them, and so Phil kind of fit better, I think, within the general context of the band. And then ultimately Steve Hackett was brought in as a replacement for Anthony Phillips. And by the time we get to the next year, Nursery Crime is out. The following year, Foxtrot's out. The following year, Selling England by the Pound. And then the following year, I think we get The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. And with every release, the band is gaining more and more fans. They're not really selling a ton of records at this point in their career, but they're gathering in these fans that absolutely love what they're doing. And it wouldn't be until, I think, the Duke album, until they had a #1 album. But all of this music in the 70s ends up sticking and being relevant all these years later because it's so darn good. And, they were in this part of their development as people. They were young folks, but in that time period, you don't really have a whole lot to lose, and you've got everything to gain, and you're really not jaded yet. And the ideas are flowing, and they're really exploring what it means to be musicians, what it means to be songwriters, composers, and performers. And it was lovely. Really lovely to hear this song. So, friends, I'm looking forward to getting to Trespass before too long. I would love to add this album to my albums of Genesis that I have heard. Of course, I want to hear all of them, but especially I need to get back to these early albums to make sure that I have a full understanding of where they started, and then kind of flow into what we know of as the classic era of Genesis. So, a wonderful time today, y'all. Stagnation from Genesis. I am really thankful that you've been tuned in for this one today. I'm back on Friday with our 999th episode, and we're going to be listening to side 2 of Abbey Road, and then we'll be celebrating our 1000th episode. I am so thankful for all of the folks who have been watching our videos and been a friend and interacting with us for all of these episodes and videos, and sharing your love of music with all of us here. We really do appreciate it. And I know that I'll see you down the line, because I'm sure that I will get back to more Genesis, y'all. But I believe that is going to be all for me today. I thank you very much for being with me, and we'll see you next time on another edition of The Daily Doug.